So Resident Evil 4 has been out for 2 weeks as of filming this video, and coincidentally, I just got my 100% platinum on PlayStation 5, and after beating the game for 6 times to be able to get that 100% platinum trophy, I have to say, I think this Resident Evil 4 remake is the best Resident Evil we've ever gotten. And that is also including the OG Resident Evil 1 remake. Now, it is worth mentioning, because I know some Resident Evil purists are probably going to get really pissed off at me saying that. It is worth mentioning that, I don't think anything is perfect. There's no perfect remake out there. But Resident Evil 1 remake and Resident Evil 4 remake, they both get really close to that perfect score of the best remake of all time. I'm not discounting that. I do really like the Resident Evil 1 remake, but it's not my favorite remake. And of course, that does come down to personal opinion. But just looking at facts here, the reason I'm saying this is mostly because if we look at Resident Evil 1 Remake, one of the things that it did was graphically, it improved the game, substantially, especially, the move to GameCube graphics after it had released with the OG on PlayStation 1 and PC back in 1996. Other things that they also added in the OG remake was Crimson Head. That was one of the things that I really liked that they added gameplay-wise, from a gameplay perspective. So, as mentioned, they improved the game graphically and also gameplay-wise. But when it came down to the story, I felt that it wasn't the best. One of the issues that I had with the OG Resident Evil 1 remake is that they did not address the huge issue with the plot holes concerning Rebecca and Barry. So, as many of you guys know, if you played as Chris, you would save Rebecca and Jill. And if you played as Jill, you would save Barry and Chris. But whichever character you played as, there was always one character that was left, unheard of. They were basically missing. We don't know anything that happened. They probably just blew up with the mansion. But of course, that's a huge issue in the Resident Evil lore, because of course we do know that those characters did survive. We know that Barry survived that. We know that Rebecca survived the events of Resident Evil 1 remake. So it's really weird that that was never addressed. And so when it comes to the story, that's one key example as to why I didn't feel the first remake was the best, in my opinion, because that right there, that huge thing right there, was a huge red flag to me that, they could have let that remake cook a little longer for it to be the best remake possible. Now, we did go over the Barry and Rebecca kind of issue, but there's also the other issue of the differences between Rebecca from the Resident Evil 0 and as well as Resident Evil 1 remake. They're completely different characters. And again, those are just 2 things out of everything that I basically discussed in that video. So if you guys want to know more on this subject, then make sure to go watch that video. But going back to the topic at hand, when it comes to Resident Evil 4, for this game, I thought, again, graphically, they did a great job. Gameplay-wise, they did a phenomenal job. And as well as story-wise, they fixed a lot of issues. And they actually tied Resident Evil 4 to kind of like the rest of Resident Evil as well, which I thought they did a phenomenal job at that. If anything, I think I only had 2 major nitpicks about this whole remake that we will go over, and I did have a bunch of minor nitpicks that we will be going over as well. But in any case, that's basically the biggest factor here as to why I think Resident Evil 4 wins the best remake for Resident Evil, is mostly due to that. And if anything, I'll just state this right now. I'm honestly super excited for the future of Resident Evil. I can't wait for all of these remakes to come, and happen. I want them to definitely remake Resident Evil Code Veronica, and I would also really like them to kind of make their own game for Operation Javier. Talking about the gameplay, I thought that them adding, armor and kind of adding that durability aspect to the armor and as well as the knifing was truly an amazing feature that they added. I love the knifing in this game. If anything, the OG RE4, the knifing was really fun, but it didn't feel like you couldn't upgrade your knife. And so them adding that feature to Resident Evil 4 Remake was truly a great idea. I don't know who came up with it, especially when it comes to the parry system. The parry mechanic, this has never been done in Resident Evil. There's always been kind of a dodge mechanic, but having a parry mechanic being introduced, it just felt so right, especially with Resident Evil 4, where the knife is, such a big component to the story with how Leon was basically trained. Going back to the story as well, I really thought it was interesting that they basically changed up the story of Krauser and Leon's relationship. In the OG Resident Evil 4, Krauser was just a soldier while Leon was working for the government as a government agent. If anything, they changed the story to make it so that Krauser was in fact the mentor to Leon. And, so I thought that was interesting as well. The fact that they also changed story aspects to Operation Javier, they made it so that it was actually a platoon, which I thought was interesting. So if anything, I'm just really looking forward to the remakes that they're going to be making for Resident Evil. I definitely want them to remake a Dark Side Chronicle. I guess not a Dark Side, but just like a solo game of Operation Javier, because, that's something that I've always thought that they could basically expand on. We didn't really get the full full story. We just got it in a gun rail shooter in the Dark Side Chronicles. But having them really just tell us a lot about those events in Resident Evil 4, they kind of just gave us a taste. You know what I mean? So they can definitely just go off and do like a spin-off and give us their own Operation Javier game, which you know what, I'm really excited for. And just with other remakes as well. This was one of the conversations that I had during my live stream of my first playthrough through Resident Evil 4. You know, a lot of people were saying, yeah, how are you feeling with this remake? And I'm like, you know what? I really love it. I'm actually excited for other remakes. There was one viewer that was like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to start remaking 5, 6, 7, 8? And I'm like, you know what? At this point, I'll take it. Because, you know, one of the things that I did not like about Resident Evil 7 was the fact that Ethan did not have a face. So that did not make me care for the character. You know, I'm not going to care. He was literally a no name, no face kind of a character. So if they were to just give us not a remake per se, but maybe a remastered edition of Resident Evil 7 where they actually made it third person, got rid of that first person nonsense, and as well as giving Ethan an actual face, not like what they did with Resident Evil 8, where if you turn your head, you can only see like the side of his side profile, but like barely. I thought that was really dumb. You know what? At this point, I'll take it. I'll take remakes all day because, you know, the amount of work and effort that went through the remake for Resident Evil 4 is really noticeable. But one of the things that I really loved about this remake was the fact that they added, you know, more to the story. And sure enough, that was actually one of the things that Shinji Mikami, for those of you that don't know, is the creator of Resident Evil and as well as the director for the OG Resident Evil 4. He did specify in an interview because they asked him, hey, there's a rumor that Resident Evil 4 is working on. What do you think about this? And he's like, you know what? I only had 3 weeks to work on the story. So if they are working on a rumor, I would love it if they basically worked on the story more because I only had 3 weeks to do it in. If anything, that's basically just me paraphrasing what that interview was about. Make sure to check out that full video if you guys are interested. So that's one of the things that I honestly really liked. I love the fact that they gave us more lore on Salazar. They gave us more lore on Sadler. You know, to be honest, I would have liked it if they had given us a little bit more regarding Sadler. Not much was said. I also really like the fact that they gave us more lore on Luis. Luis Serra Navarro is his full name, which is something that we didn't know. So Serra was actually his middle name. So that was really awesome to see. But one of the things that I really liked that they added about Luis's backstory was the fact that he actually worked with Umbrella. Now, this is something that the OG never addressed. That was not part of the story, but I really loved how they kind of just put that. It just fits so well, you know, that Luis could be such a brilliant scientist, because that was always something that I thought was kind of strange about the OG, was that when you first meet Luis, he basically states that he used to be a cop in Madrid, but he's also the head scientist, or one of the head scientists on the island that's working for Sadler. So I always thought that was a discrepancy there. Like, what is he? I mean, Resident Evil is known for having characters that are really, you know, geniuses and can do several things at once. Like, for example, Rebecca, you know, who basically I think graduated university at 16 or somewhere around. I don't know. I think that was Wesker. I don't know. One of them I think both of them graduated like before the age of 18 with like a doctorate, like something ridiculous. And then after they became like, you know, like, you know, SWAT team members, or in this case, STARS members, which is like an elite, you know, police officer counterterrorism kind of task force. And it's like it's like, okay, so you have a doctorate, you're a doctor, PhD, and you're also a cop. Like, okay, that's a little weird. But again, so that's what always kind of confused me. So I really like that they kind of retconned that for the remake. They didn't really have Luis be a cop anymore. But yeah, stuff like that I really loved. I really loved that kind of addition. I also really loved like all of the little tidbits of information that you could find throughout the remake. You know, they did really expand on the story. Now, going back to what I was saying before on the 2 major nitpicks that I had with this game was, first off, U3 was not part of the remake. I did not like that because I honestly thought that boss fight was kind of random. I would have liked it if they gave us more backstory in the remake, but I didn't like that they basically took that out. I thought he was a really cool boss fight. And second, you know, we never got to see the second Verdugo that basically that goes along with Salazar. So we fought the first Verdugo. I think that was his right hand or the left one, you know, the one with black, but the one with red, the red cloaked one, we never saw him. So in the OG RE4, we did see him in the boss fight with Salazar, and he basically gets used to transform into Salazar's final boss form. In the remake, that never happened. So we never saw Salazar use the other Verdugo as kind of just like another body to transform into a monster. That did not happen. So I thought that was really strange. If anything, when I was basically, detailing my thoughts as I was playing the game live, one of my viewers basically stated, you know what would be cool is if they added those characters 4 separate ways. So I have to give a huge shout out to AdJ for stating that, because you know what? that's a brilliant theory. And if that does turn out to be true, then again, that just solidifies my thoughts as to why I believe that this is the best remake we've ever had. Now, it's already been confirmed that we are getting a separate Ways DLC. So yeah, I'm really curious to see if they were saving U3 and the second Verdugo for Ada's story. But if anything, I just wanted to say I'm so excited for this. And that kind of saved my negative thoughts. But those are the only major nitpicks that I had regarding Resident Evil 4 Remake. All right, so the first thing that I really loved about this remake, and this was actually one of my concerns that I had that I wanted them to address when the remake basically got announced, was the Spanish. You know, as many Spanish speakers know, when they basically first played Resident Evil 4 Remake, I think a lot of people that spoke Spanish, it was kind of weird to hear the ganados from the OG speak with a kind of more of a generic Spanish. You know, there's only one scene in the OG RE4 where the Mexican accent kind of just gets revealed, like the actor definitely gets outed. And that was that cutscene in the Del Lago scene where Leon kind of looks at the ganados dumping a body in the lake. That scene right there is the only time where you can tell right away that it's Mexican Spanish that they're speaking. These are Mexican VAs. But I noticed a lot of people have this misconception that the OG, that it was all Mexican. No, I would say it's more of generic Spanish, but it's generic Spanish from Latin America. That's what I would say with that. So one of the things that I wanted them to add into the remake was the fact that we were going to get Spanish from Spain. And sure enough, after making all of my dissecting videos where I basically did a full breakdown analysis of all the trailers, you know, one of the head translator actually sent me a message, commented on one of my videos and said, hey, I'm the head translator and I want to say that all of the lines, the voice lines from the OG have been placed into the remake, but we just made them more appropriate to the region of Spain. So for people that don't speak Spanish, I guess this wasn't an issue for a lot of people, but for Spanish speakers, it was. You know, playing the original Resident Evil and, you know, going through and, you know, knowing that this was in Spain, but everybody sounded like they were speaking Latin America, like a generic Latin American accent, was weird. You know, it would be the equivalent to, you know, playing a game that's set in Britain, you know, in the UK, but everybody has like an American accent. And it'd be like, it's like, what? Like, that's weird. You know what I mean? So the fact that they had the voice actors, I don't think all of the voice actors were from Spain, but the fact that they actually had the voice actors speak with Spanish accents from Spain was already a huge bonus. Yeah, it kind of just brought you into the game's kind of world a lot more, and not like the original where it kind of just took you out of it, where it's like, okay, this is definitely not Spain. You know, we're definitely just like in a Latin American village or something. This is weird. You know, as Spanish speakers, I think a lot of us were probably like, dude, this is just that. This is not working. So I love the fact that they fixed the Spanish. Now, the second thing that I really loved about the remake was the fact that they fixed Ashley's character. I honestly really love the fact that they just went out, changed her character completely. You know, the OG Ashley I thought her voice was super annoying. Also, she acted like a brat a lot of the times. You know, there was that specific scene where she gets taken, you know, in that kind of corridor in the hallway, and then, you know, the bars go over her and she gets flipped. And it all starts with basically Leon asking her, hey, are you okay? Are you all right? And then she's like, leave me alone. And then, you know, she goes and starts running. It's like, okay, Ashley, like, what are you doing? Like, she was just a very annoying character in the OG. She was very bratty. You know, I didn't like her voice. Her voice was really like, is just really nagging kind of a voice. And I really loved what they did with the character. I loved the voice actor's portrayal of Ashley. And the other thing that I also found out was I think the voice actor for Ashley is from the same hometown as where I'm from. So in Canada. So yeah, there was a lot of Canadian voice actors as well. And I think a lot of them did a phenomenal job. I think the only one that was American in reality was Nick Apostolides, who did a fantastic job as Leon. That's the other thing that I also want to talk about after. But going back to Ashley, yeah, I really thought that they did a phenomenal job with Ashley. She felt more real. You know, she felt like more down to earth. You know, I really love the fact that, you know, she would, you know, say a lot of funny things. So for example, if you're playing as Leon and you shoot something really from far away, you know, you shoot a gun in the face, you get a headshot, she'll be like, nice shot. You know, like she actually gives you compliments. You know, if you catch her, she'll be like, oh, skills or whatever. You know, like I really like that. I really love what they did with the character for Ashley. You know, if anything, it just, they made the character so nice and kind of just more down to earth that it almost felt like you would, like Ashley's new character, not the OG one, but the remake Ashley, was somebody that you would want to hang out with. You know, so I really, honestly, I have to give a huge applause to the Resident Evil 4 remake dev team, and as well as all the actors, especially the voice actor for Ashley, who did a phenomenal job. She really fixed the the character. I honestly like this character a lot more than the other one. I like the OG Ashley, but I just thought she was super annoying. So this one, yeah, I didn't find her annoying at all. And the last thing that I also want to mention about the OG Ashley that I didn't like, and this was not really the voice actor's fault or anything like that, but it was more of the dev team. I did not like how the OG Ashley was so over-sexualized. If you played the game, you literally see her panties in so many of the cutscenes. Like, I was like, dude, like, what is this? Like, I'm trying to play Resident Evil 4. I'm not trying to look at somebody's panties. You know what I mean? Which also brings me to other reviews of people that were review bombing Resident Evil 4 Remake, and they were like, yeah, we never got to see Ashley's panties. And it's like, dude, what? Like, are you serious right now? Bro, like, that's your takeaway from Resident Evil 4 Remake, is that they didn't have all of the panty shots from the, like, that's one of the things that I honestly really love about the remake is that they didn't over-sexualize Ashley. They made her a character that you cared about throughout the game. One of my viewers in the live stream also stated that, one of the things that he didn't like about the remake was that Ashley, you don't get to play with Ashley all of the time, because, the remake Ashley was such a fun character to be around that it was kind of a bummer when she was taken away, for the story's sake. So I thought that was funny, and I 100% agree with that person that commented that during the live stream. But yeah. Now, the next thing that I honestly really loved about Resident Evil 4 Remake was the fact that they fixed a lot of the cutscenes. For starters, the villager encounter scene, the first scene of the game when you walk into the cabin. In the OG, I was not a big fan of that, because I always thought it was really hilarious. The fact that Leon just shows up into somebody's house and says, hey, and, starts talking in English, even though they're in Spain, starts talking, and then it just made him look really awkward. And I really love the fact that in the remake, Leon was not awkward in that one. If anything, he goes into the house, he asks, where the cop is in Spanish, in broken Spanish, I might say. It wasn't perfect Spanish, but the fact that he honestly tried to speak Spanish was something that I thought that, again, that it made it more realistic. Now, if you guys want to know my full thoughts on this scene, I basically did a full dissection breakdown of the OG and as well as the remake. Another cutscene that I also thought that they really fixed in the remake was Luis's death. In the remake, they changed it so that Luis's death happens with Krauser. So Krauser throws a knife on his back, and then that's what basically kills him. I thought that was a much better death scene as opposed to the OG, where, he basically just runs into a room and he just gets penetrated by Sadler's tail or whatever that thing was. So for that, yeah, stuff like that, I honestly really thought that the remake did a fantastic job. I really loved how it wasn't as cheesy as like the OG, but it is worth mentioning as well that Leon does say cringy lines when you're playing through the remake, but it doesn't happen with cutscenes. So that's one of the things that I really liked. Another thing that I honestly really loved as well was Los Iluminados cult. I thought that in this one, it really felt like a darker tone, especially when it came to the cult. I loved all the cutscenes where you kind of just saw them chanting, speaking Spanish. You kind of saw them doing their ritual. That was like the first beginning shot of the game. I love those scenes. It really just felt more like a cult. And yeah, overall, just they did a fantastic job with making Los Iluminados honestly feel like an actual real world cult, not like just like kind of just a mid cult or whatever. I don't know what you would call it, because the OG, they didn't really feel like that menacing, but in this one, they honestly did a fantastic job of really making it seem like, yeah, this could happen. You know what I mean? Like something like this could happen. There was a parasite, some crazy people living up in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? So I really love that. It made it more realistic, a lot more scarier. So yeah, I really love what they did with Los Iluminados. Another thing that I also wanted to mention as well was the Novistadors. I thought the Novistadors being able to camouflage rather than just turn invisible like it was in the OG was a fantastic idea. It reminds me, I think one of my viewers, Adjay as well, he stated that, it reminded him of like the Metal Gear Solid 4 outfit, where, it's like, it's cloaking wherever you go. With the camouflage, it just takes, like, if you're next to a brick wall, you're gonna camouflage it to that brick wall. So playing Resident Evil 4 Remake and having the Novistadors be really stealthy and camouflage, they got me sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. Especially on my first playthrough, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even see him, because I wasn't paying that much attention. Like, there would be a couch, and then there'd be like a Novistador right there hiding. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I don't know who came up with that, but it really just, they did a fantastic job. I also really love the fact that they also gave us more lore as well, kind of to giving us the scientific scientific name as to what they're actually called, which was U2. So anyways, I really love that aspect. But yeah, the fact that they can camouflage rather than turn invisible was just brilliant. Another cool thing that I also really liked about the PS5 and playing on the PS was the haptic feedback. You know, there was something to, I don't know if it was a haptic feedback, maybe it was just a normal vibration, but I noticed that if Leon goes to like 1 HP, my controller was kind of beating like a heartbeat. So I think that was the haptic feedback. Let me know any Xbox players or PC players if you guys felt that as well. But I thought that was really cool. I really loved how if you played Resident Evil 4, you know, you would be playing that and then, you know, you're at 1 HP and your controller would vibrate like, you know, like a heartbeat, which was honestly super awesome. The other thing I also want to talk about too is Nick Apostolidis' role in Resident Evil 4. I thought he did a phenomenal job of portraying Leon. This was something that I was kind of concerned about, not even like when Resident Evil 4 Remake came out. This was actually something that I was really concerned about when Infinite Darkness came out on Netflix, you know, roughly around, I think, 2 years ago. During that time, I was actually really concerned as to whether Nick Apostolidis was going to be able to basically pull off Leon. Because, of course, for those of you that don't know, in the timeline, since the CGI movies or the CGI slash shows, in this case with Infinite Darkness, that does take place 2 years after the events of Resident Evil 4. So that's actually an older Leon by 2 years from the events of Resident Evil 4. So I thought that with Infinite Darkness, I thought that he sounded exactly the same as he did in Resident Evil 2 Remake. So I don't know who it was. I think, to be honest, it probably was a collaborative effort with the director, maybe the writing. The fact that they had Leon be a lot more serious, the fact that he sounded more fed up a lot of the times when he was playing, it reminded me more of a Leon from kind of like the Vendetta movie or Resident Evil 6. So that kind of a Leon, more of like the veteran kind of Leon, the Leon that's been through a lot of stuff. You know, he's had it up to here, but he's also like a professional. And I honestly really thought that Nick Apostolidis did a phenomenal job of portraying that in Resident Evil 4 Remake. You can really hear like in his voice, in the intonation when he's speaking, like even like the beginning scene when you talk to Hunnigan when you're in the Hunter's Lodge and, you know, he talks to Hunnigan and he's like, you know, Condor 1 or whatever. You know, there's kind of like a raspiness to his voice. Little nuances like that he basically added to the character. I thought he did a phenomenal job. So I just wanted to give a huge shout out as well to Nick Apostolidis for that. Now, the other thing that I really liked about the remake was the fact that they added requests. So AKA, I guess you would call it side missions. That was very interesting when I first heard about that. I was kind of concerned as to how that would work and how that would, you know, fit in the Resident Evil universe because, of course, we've never really had that in Resident Evil. That's more of an open world kind of a thing. But Resident Evil has always had backtracking, so that's basically the only thing that I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And that's the only way that I could see this working is with the backtracking. And sure enough, yeah, I thought they did a phenomenal job. Adding requests or adding side missions to Resident Evil was a very interesting and bold move, but I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of that. So again, that's one of the things that I also really loved about Resident Evil 4. And the last thing that I also loved about Resident Evil 4 Remake was the actor that portrayed Ramon Salazar. I thought, to be honest, I think his name is Marcio Machado. I might be mistaken. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, I think Leon, Ashley, and Salazar's voice actors were probably my favorites out of this whole cast. I thought he did a fantastic Spanish accent. You know, I loved his take with the character, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of just the character's design because it kind of looked like Margaret Thatcher. I think a lot of the memes were saying that, and it's true, he does look like an old lady. So the character model, I will be doing a separate video, kind of just me critiquing all of the character models. But when it comes to the voice acting and the performance, I thought, yeah, he did a fantastic job. Like I said, I think his name is Marcio Machado. I think he did a fantastic job playing Ramon Salazar. All right, so now we're moving on to my minor nitpicks. Now, it is worth mentioning that I still love this game, you know. I don't want this to be like, oh, I'm just complaining or whatever, but these are just really minor nitpicks that I thought could have been changed and it just would have made the game even better. But I don't want you guys to think that just because I had these nitpicks that just automatically means that I hated the game. No, that's not the case. You will hear my rating at the end of the video. So the first minor nitpick that I had was the Spanish accent for certain actors. So I remember playing, I remember the first time I heard Luis's accent, I was really concerned about how he was going to sound because I thought at first I wasn't the biggest fan, but after hearing him a little more and playing through the game a lot more, you know what? I didn't think it was perfect, but I didn't think it was the worst either. So I thought he did an okay job with Luis's accent, and yeah, at the end of the day, it didn't really detract me from enjoying the game. It didn't affect me from enjoying the game. So yeah, it's not a big issue. Again, these are minor nitpicks. But one of one of the actors that I really was not a big fan of for his Spanish accent was Vitorres Mendez. His accent sounded more like a Russian accent for some weird reason. So, you know, again, these are just critiques to the performance, but again, that did not detract me from enjoying Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, the other minor nitpick that I had was Leon's weird running. You know, throughout the game, every time you only had like a pistol or whatever, Leon would kind of run like this, almost like he was it almost looked like Leon was like trying to run like faster, but he was just slowly jogging, but it looked like he was trying to run faster, but it just made him look kind of stiff. I don't know. That was a little weird. Again, this is just a minor nitpick, but I thought Leon's running in Resident Evil 4 Remake was a little strange. Was not a big fan of it. Another minor nitpick that I also had was the button prompts. So throughout the game, you know, if you're sneaking or you're doing stealth behind an enemy, or whatever, like for example, if you're doing the Garrador fight, you know, the Clawrer fight, the Wolverine guys fight, you know, if you're right next to him or right behind him, sometimes it wouldn't activate. And sometimes, you know, the prompt would show up, but it wouldn't register. So you would press R2, but it wouldn't do like the backstabbing, you know, stealth knife attack. It wouldn't do that. It would just basically just do the normal slash. And it's like, dude, what? Like I was looking at it and I thought that was weird. Again, this is a minor nitpick. It did not detract me from liking Resident Evil 4 Remake. But let me know down in the comments if you guys also had this issue with the game. But yeah, there was a lot of instances where, yeah, it was like, when is R2 going to come up? And sometimes R2 would show up, but it would not register in time. Or I would just do the normal R2 slash instead of the stealth kill, which I thought was really weird. And speaking of the stealth, that's the other thing that, again, is a minor nitpick for me. But again, this is something that I already knew was going to be a thing before I went into Resident Evil 4 Remake. You know, as mentioned in my, you know, my full breakdown analysis of all of the trailers leading up to Resident Evil 4, when it comes to stealth, Resident Evil has never been the best at that. You know, this is not Metal Gear Solid. This is not that type of game where you're going to have stealth be a priority. There's so many instances where just the AI was just really stupid. Even though I was playing like on professional, like, you know, the highest difficulty in the game, I would just be running behind somebody, you know, at full speed of that weird running that Leon would do. And then I would just press R2 and like the person wouldn't even know. His friend would see me kill the Ganella and it wouldn't even be a thing, would not be an issue. I would not get alerted. So that was kind of weird. You know, again, that was already expected though. So that's not really a huge major nitpick that I had about the game because again, you know, being a Resident Evil, you know, content creator, you know, being a Resident Evil fan for so many years, when it comes to stealth, Resident Evil does not have that. You know, it's not the best. But I do have to give them credit and say that this is probably the best stealth that we've had so far. You know, the other time that we've had stealth is probably in the Resident Evil 2 Remake when you play as Sherry. You know, there wasn't any attacks or anything like that. It was just basically hide and seek. And then there was also that other time in Revelations 2 where they also incorporated stealth. And yeah, I would say Resident Evil 4 is probably the best stealth that we've seen so far in Resident Evil. But if you compare it to an actual stealth game like Metal Gear Solid or like another like Splinter Cell, yeah, it falls really short. So again, that's just a minor nitpick. It was very obvious to any Resident Evil fan playing this that stealth was not going to be the best, you know? Another minor nitpick that I also had was the fact that you could not kill the merchant. Why did they take that away? Are we going to see the merchant again? Is that going to be a thing? Like, I'm so confused. Why did they take that away? I love the fact that in the OG, you know, after you were done with the merchant, you could just shoot him in the face and he would come back the next spawn, and that didn't happen. I tried to kill him and it didn't happen. I was like, dude, really? You had to take that out? There's also other weird instances as well. Not with the merchant, but with Luis. So in the OG, if you guys remember in the cabin fight or in the villa fight, now that it's called the villa fight in the remake, if you shot Luis too much accidentally, or if you just were deliberately trying to shoot Luis, in the OG, there would be a secret cutscene that would show up and Luis would just shoot you. So I was really confused that they didn't have that. They didn't add that in the remake, which I thought was pretty strange. Like why not? I tried. I shot him with like several RPGs. Nothing. The man was like, "What are you doing?" You know, that's all he would say. He's like, "What are you doing?" And that's it. And then he would just get up again. So I thought that was strange. Again, why did they take that out? That was just another secret kind of detail that I loved about the OG, was all of these ways that Leon could get killed. But I guess, you know, it's a remake, so they changed it. And again, this is not like a major nitpick. This is just minor. Again, it is worth noting that. Another minor nitpick that I also noticed was, I honestly really like the fact that in the OG, when you go underneath the castle, that whole area was basically like a ruin. So I really like that. And if anything, that kind of just got replaced and kind of just expanded in the island section of the game. So they kind of just took that aspect of the underground castle tunnels and the castle area, They took that and kind of just forced that onto the island, which was fine. You know, they didn't cut it completely, which I really like. That this remake, they didn't really cut any rooms, which was really great to see. But the fact that they took that out from the mining section, I thought that was a little weird. You know, I would have preferred to have seen that more of like ruins of like the ancient occultic ruins on the castle as well as the island. But I mean, at the end of the day, they still added that for the island section. They expanded it more for there. So it's not a huge, again, it's not a major nitpick, but I would have liked it if they kept that kind of ruins in the castle section. As well. Now, speaking of the island section, one of the things that I thought was really strange about the remake was the fact that we did not have Leon meet Sadler right from the get-go. So if you guys remember in the OG, the first time Leon encounters Sadler is like officially, worth noting officially, the first time that he meets Sadler is at the church, right after he basically saves Ashley. Now, that didn't really make much sense since Sadler obviously could have controlled them or he could have just swarmed the whole area. So again, I have to give credit to the remake. Again, these are minor nitpicks, but I thought it was weird that we never got a Leon meeting Sadler until we got to the island section. Like, that's a really long time. Like, there's literally 3 parts to Resident Evil 4. Village, castle, and island. And island is like literally the last part of the game. So I thought that was really strange that we didn't really officially meet like the villain, like the true villain of the game until the end section. Again, that was a minor nitpick. I can understand why they didn't have him meet Sadler right at the beginning, but they could have changed it so that we could have met him a little bit longer, or maybe he could have hacked the comms, you know, because that was one of the parts, a lot of the dialogue with Leon and Sadler was with the comms, as soon as after you defeat Salazar and you go to the island. So that was a bit strange that we didn't have that, but again, just a minor nitpick. Another minor nitpick that I had was they changed the designs of the JJs. I thought that was really strange. Was not the biggest fan of that. Why did they make the JJs have a pig mask? I also really liked how they had like huge turrets and they were really big, bulky kind of guys. And the fact that they were just now pigs, they just looked like fat pigs, like a guy with the pig mask, was just kind of strange. I didn't really get that. I didn't really like that kind of art design for that. And you know what's interesting is that I was a big fan of the brutes. The brutes or the cow guys, the cowhead guys, that was fine, but I wasn't a big fan of them kind of combining the brute, kind of the new design for the brute with the JJ and making some kind of pig with like a cross. I was not a big fan of that. And speaking of enemies that they kind of changed or they just omitted, was they omitted those big guys that you would encounter on the island. If you guys remember in the OG, there were these big guys with like metal eye patches or whatever. They looked like they were experimented on. There wasn't a lot that was said regarding those guys. I guess they were other JJs. I don't know. It's really weird. Maybe they were like the early stage of the JJs. They didn't really have those. They kind of just cut that out. We did not see those kinds of guys in the remake, which I thought was very interesting. It was very weird. I would have liked to have seen them been redesigned, obviously, because their design in the OG was really strange. So if anything, I think it would have been better if they had just kept it, but if they had just redesigned the character of those like metal eye patch dudes. So I thought it was weird that they just completely cut him out. Other minor nitpick that I had was the fact that the CQBR rifle, I think that's the name of it, was a rifle now. It was not a, like it didn't take machine gun bullets. It took rifle ammunition. And I wasn't a big fan that it also was in first person. You know, that's probably one of my favorite weapons in the new remakes. So in Resident Evil 3 Remake, I really loved that machine gun. And the fact that they took it out, was kind of a bummer for me. I would have liked it if they had kept that more. If they had kept it as a machine gun like it was in RE3 Remake, because I love that gun. But the fact that also it was just first person every time you scope, so they just wanted you to use it like a sniper, was not the biggest. Yeah, again, this is just a minor nitpick. I would have liked it if they just kept it as a machine gun because I love that gun. I love that gun. So yeah. The other nitpick that I also have is regarding Krauser's boss fight. I was not a big fan of them kind of adding another arm and kind of having like a grippy arm on his right hand and as well as his left hand kind of being like the OG. I thought that was weird. I would have just preferred if they just kept it one-handed rather than just two-handed being infected. That just made him kind of just look a little ridiculous. You know, and if anything, it kind of just reminded me of Wesker's kind of transformation, like final boss fight in Resident Evil 5. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I would have liked it if they just kept one kind of transformation. That would have been awesome. Another nitpick that I also had, again, this is a minor nitpick, but I wasn't the biggest fan of them adding a crouch button. So if anything, them adding a crouch button for like certain dodges, like for example, when you're fighting Krauser, as we were just talking about that, there's certain instances where Leon just crouches right when Krauser does like a sidekick to his face. That's really weird for me to just instinctively just do a crouch, especially if somebody's kicking you, because you could get kicked in the face. So that was weird. For some instances, it did work. Having the crouch button, like when you're fighting the Verdugo and the Verdugo's tail's coming from the ceiling and kind of whips at you, Leon kind of crouches like that. That's an okay kind of a dodge. I thought it was weird that they didn't also incorporate Resident Evil 3 Remake's dodge mechanic. I thought that would have been really cool if we had, the parry system as well as the dodge mechanic. But maybe they did do some testing on that, and maybe that would have made the characters way too OP for the game. So it probably would have made them, appear more like RE6, kind of mechanics. So especially, in that one, you could roll around and do a lot more stuff. You could just jump out of the way. So maybe that's why they didn't do that. Maybe they're reserving that for later remakes. But that was something that I really loved about the Resident Evil 3 remake, was that dodge mechanic that just felt so fluid. Especially if you timed it perfectly, you could dodge really far away. So yeah, that was, again, this is just a minor nitpick, but I would have been interesting to have seen them incorporate that. Hopefully we see them incorporate that in later remakes that they're going to be doing as well. Now, the last minor nitpick that I had was regarding having them give us a crafting section. Now, the first time they did this, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure they did this with the village, and I was not a big fan of it during that time as well. Calling it crafting, it seems off to me, especially when we're talking about Resident Evil. If anything, it just kind of reminds me of like The Last of Us or like other games that have crafting mechanics, like survival games or even Minecraft. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't feel right to be calling it crafting when in all of Resident Evil history, it's been combining stuff. So I thought that was really strange that we have like a dedicated crafting thing. And also, it doesn't really make much sense, like realistically. This is something that I stated in my trailer breakdowns, but how is it that Leon could just make a grenade or make a flashbang that looks exactly like a manufactured flashbang or a manufactured grenade? Like, how can he do that? You know what I mean? Like in The Last of Us, it made sense in that context because, if Joel or Ellie starts crafting stuff, it looks homemade. You know what I mean? Like it looks like a homemade smoke bomb, or it looks like a homemade grenade or whatever, or pipe bomb. I don't know. When it came to Resident Evil, having that kind of crafting mechanic or crafting, menu was really strange to see. It did come in handy, but I was just not a fan of the name. So again, this is just a minor nitpick, but I would like it if they just changed that, because that is definitely not like crafting in Resident Evil. Like it doesn't sound right. But anyways, those are all of my minor nitpicks for the game. You know what? I'm probably going to give Resident Evil 4 Remake a 10 out of 10 because you know what? As mentioned, I think this is probably the best remake we've had so far. I've had an excellent time playing this, getting 100% on it. Can't wait for the Separate Ways DLC. I can't wait for any new remakes that's happening because yeah, this new remake kind of wave is something that's not old. The first time Capcom basically thought of doing remakes was all the way back after the events of Resident Evil 5, so 2009. After that game came out, Capcom had a lot of serious thoughts regarding rebooting the whole series and kind of just remaking all of them. And it seems that after so many years with Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 4, I'm really hyped for all of the new remakes. I want them to remake 1. I want them to remake Code Veronica. Like, I think Code Veronica definitely needs one, especially before Resident Evil 4. Before we go to Resident Evil 5, let's go back to Code Veronica. Let's fix that and then move on. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, then make sure to click this video where you guys can see my other reviews. Anyways, thank you so much for watching.